This episode of the Occultae Veritatis podcast is brought to us by Studio Headphones. For 15% off your first purchase of Studio Headphones, enter code OVPOD at checkout.
Warning, this podcast contains violence, sexuality, gore, and other horrible and disturbing things. Listener discretion is advised. Also, be aware that the hosts of this venture are ignorant dipshits, so please do not take anything they say as fact. And enjoy the show.
Now, are you sitting comfortably? Good. Then we'll begin.
Today we had 15 homicides and 63 violent crimes, as if that's the way it's supposed to be.
The atoms in your left hand probably came from a different star than your right hand.
It is our basic human right to be fucked up.
A second plane now has crashed into the other tower of the World Trade Center.
Putting chemicals in the water that turn the friggin' frogs gay.
The defendant shall be incarcerated for the rest of her natural life with no possibility of parole.
You are not machines. You are not cattle. You are men.
We were somewhere around Barstow, on the edge of the desert, when the drugs began to take hold.
Occultae Veritatis.
Welcome back, occultists, to the Occultae Veritatis podcast. I'm here in studio. I'm Leon Filger. With me, the lovely
Sage Murray
and
Leon Filger.
Fuck you.
No, I'm Oud Gallifrey.
And in studio, our special guest, Cami Clark.
Hello. Hi, Cami.
She's an emergency room nurse, has been for 3 years, and a second-year medical student. So before we begin with the episode, let's jump straight into What's Your Poison?
So, what's your poison?
Okay, so this upcoming What's Your Poison is going to be my favorite liqueur in the entire world. Here's the unveiling. It's been in the freezer. It's delightful. Black Sambuca.
Ooh, I love Sambuca.
There we go.
I'm not sure what Sambuca is, actually.
It's like black licorice.
Oh.
Yeah, you're going to love it. Now, because Oud's a piece of shit, he's lost all of our shot glasses.
Yeah.
So we're basically drinking Black Sambuca out of schooners today.
Yeah. I think it's classy.
Super classy.
Because I'm forced to think it's classy.
That's a big shot.
You fucking pour it then.
Is this like hard liquor or is this like wine?
It's hardish.
Oh, none for me.
Give it to Andrew.
Andrew?
Or Jen?
Jen? Yeah.
Actually, that's not bad.
You're not supposed to taste it yet.
Oh, shit. I didn't know there was instructions.
Daniel.
Oh, fuck, that's a lot.
By the way, for our listeners out there, if you hear an odd amount of ambiance, we have an audience this episode.
There's an audience. Yeah, the studio's
We're
packed.
recorded live in front of a studio audience.
We are, yeah, for the first time ever.
As many as can fit in my spare room, yes.
Okay, so I've previously compared Black Sambuca to getting throat fucked with a toilet brush smeared with black licorice.
No, that was something else.
No, that was throat fucked with a toilet brush smeared in cinnamon.
Oh, okay.
For the Fireball whiskey.
Oh,
right?
Yes.
All right, so cheers, my friends.
Cheers me, someone.
Clinky, clink. Okay.
I'm just going to sip it. Do you want to try it?
In small amounts, this isn't bad.
No, it's so good.
I'm kind of sipping it like scotch right now, and I'm kind of enjoying it.
You should just try it. Just try a little bit. Okay.
Yeah, I feel like you either have a positive experience with Sambuca or an incredibly negative experience with Sambuca.
Okay.
10 out of 10.
I'm going to take a full shot like Leon and see if I enjoy it the same.
Yeah, just pound her back.
Melted chilled licorice right there.
Yep. That's a bit more harsh.
I'm just going to keep sipping it.
It's like it's cough syrup for adults.
Isn't that Jag?
I think this...
Jägermeister's, yeah.
This feels like an end of the night drink rather than a beginning of the night drink.
This is an every part of the night drink for
me.
me.
Geez. Oh, no.
Yeah.
The more the merrier, man. You can have it.
Okay, so I'm going to, because I love it, it warms my soul, I'm going to rate it 17 Pope John Paul's II out of 3.5 Joseph Ratzingers and a Pope Benedict thrown in.
Damn. What's the exchange rate between Ratzingers to John Paul's?
Ratzinger is worthless. It's like dirty fiat child molesting currency.
Okay, good.
Okay, well, I'm going to give it 8.5 out of 10. Maybe not 10 out of 10. I'll give it an 8.5 because it's delicious, but I couldn't drink a ton of it because you're right. It is very viscous.
It is.
It's a viscous
I feel
liquid.
like it might be embalming fluid.
It sticks to the throat on the way down.
It does.
It's good. I have a little bit of a tickle, so like this will be good for it.
Oh, it is good for that, yeah.
I don't know, I'm glad I tried it, but I would never buy it again.
I intend on buying it.
I'm going to take the rest of this home and drink it.
I know what Sambuca is now, and I know what to avoid. Yeah. I'm going to give it a 3 out of 10.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
Fuck you.
From the accused himself, barely a whisper, but new evidence of what happened to a young man on a bus from Edmonton to Winnipeg could not be more appalling. And we should warn you, the details are graphic. They were entered today as Vincent Lee stood before a judge in the Manitoba community of Portage-la-Prairie. As Crystal Gomansing's here to tell us, the victim's family heard every disturbing detail as well.
Kevin, members of Tim McLean Jr.'s family sat right up front in the courthouse here in Portage-la-Prairie. And when the Crown prosecutor started sharing some graphic details about what happened on that Greyhound bus, some of those family members started crying. Others just held Kleenexes up to their face. The body of the 22-year-old stabbed to death on board this bus was beheaded, mutilated, and cannibalized. Those and other graphic details were shared today in court as the Crown attempted to get a mental health assessment on the accused, Vincent Lee. Joyce Dahlman told the court after the suspect was arrested and searched, police discovered body parts in Lee's pants pockets, what appeared to be an ear, part of a nose, and a portion of a mouth in a white plastic bag. After hearing that evidence, the judge granted the Crown's request. Outside the courthouse, Dahlman said she hopes Lee will be able to stand trial.
A psychiatrist will assess him to determine if he understands the process, if he understands the function of the judge, if he understands the function of counsel.
I got a number of emails saying that the historical conspiracy episodes were great, but they wanted to see me get into some true crime. So I picked the most fucked up story I could find. It's something that I followed ambitiously since it first came out, and that is the story of Vince Lee. Okay, so on the 30th of July, 2008, there was a gentleman by the name of Tim McLean. He was 22 years old. He was a carny, or I guess a carnival shouter, as they call them, the ones behind the desk who yell things at you.
I don't think they like to be called carnies.
No, they don't.
Yeah.
That's a racist term, I think. But
I don't know if it's racist. It sounds more classist.
I can't handle them.
It's called circus engineer.
That's why I don't go to the fairs, because I'm an introvert and I don't like people calling attention to me. And he's like, oh, step right up through this fucking dart at a thing that you can't possibly win because the darts are rigged. I'm like, no. Anyway, this Tim McLean fellow was riding on a Greyhound bus. He was the second row in front of the washroom at the back. And at a stop in Manitoba, a gentleman by the name of Vince Lee got on the bus, briefly sat down in the front row of the bus, and then eventually moved to the back to sit beside Mr. McLean. Didn't engage him in any conversation, according to the story, but was acting very strange, sort of eyeing him up and down, looking really nervous. There were two other passengers who were interviewed that were in the row across from them that attested to this. And then I guess just outside of Portage-la-Prairie, Manitoba, Mr. Lee, who was later identified as being schizophrenic, pulled out a knife and stabbed Mr. McLean multiple times. The bus pulled over, all the passengers and the driver were evacuated, and Mr. Lee proceeded to decapitate Mr. McLean with the knife and then cannibalized him. So the RCMP were called. Vince Lee barricaded himself on the bus. They tried to get him out, but he refused to leave. He's pacing up and down inside the bus. Eventually went back and cannibalized Mr. McLean. Once the RCMP had cleared the scene, they went back and recovered a lot of Mr. McLean. Some of his body parts were in Vince Lee's pockets, and they were never able to recover his eyes or his ears, presumably because Mr. Lee consumed them. They couldn't get Vince Lee out through the door of the bus. Eventually, he broke a window and tried to bail on his own and run. They got him. They tased him 2 times, got him on the ground, and arrested him. And since then, he was committed. Like he didn't ever stand trial. He was deemed to be unfit to stand trial on the means of mental illness. Not criminally responsible.
Which is a good documentary, NCR.
Oh, yes.
Which is a good documentary. So he was committed to a facility in Selkirk, Manitoba. And then last year, at just about this time, received a full discharge. So he's unsupervised in the community. He's back to just being a normal dude. And he changed his name. And for the interests of his privacy, we won't give his current name on the show.
Sorry.
I mean, understandably. I mean, why wouldn't you?
Yeah. So the reason I was prompted to do this episode is because a couple of months ago, I had talked about this at work. And this was a case that I'd followed really carefully because I'm mentally ill. And at one point in 2006, I was found not criminally responsible due to mental illness of assaulting an officer. So it hit personally for me because at the time when I had told people what had gone on with me, they had suggested that I still should have been charged and go to jail, even though I don't have any memory of what I had done. And I was very clearly out of my mind at the time. And my argument is that on that particular day, Vince Lee wasn't on that bus. Schizophrenia was. And he had no control over what he did. And the argument that I had with my coworker was that, of course, he should be found not criminally responsible. And of course, he should receive a discharge because he was found innocent. I mean, not criminally responsible means you're innocent. It was someone else or something else that committed the crime. And she had suggested that he should be put to death.
What?
Yeah, which was deeply disturbing for me. I mean, death sentence aside, it's hurtful to think about someone who's sick. And I mean, imagine someone with cancer, with HIV or influenza,
right?
Who does something or manifests something when they have no control over it, and then being given a life sentence for something that they didn't do was unfortunate to me. And that's why this case is so interesting, because there are very polarized viewpoints, and a lot of people feel that he should have been locked away forever and never let out. But I mean, of course, all the statistics, and then anecdotally, myself included, when you're medicated and you can put these mental illnesses to rest indefinitely. I mean, I've been hospitalized once since then, but it was never with psychosis. It was just depression and anxiety. And as long as I continue to take my meds, and I do, there's no risk of that ever happening again. And I think for the vast majority of people with mental illness, that's also the case.
Yes.
And the case of Vince Lee stigmatized schizophrenia like nothing else has. I think at that point, and this was a few years ago, we were getting to a point where we understood as a society schizophrenia and mental illness in general better. And the case of Vince Lee sort of stuffed everyone back into the closet as far as mental illness went. So this is why we have our guest here, Cami Clark, who's an emergency room nurse, second-year medical student, and has a great deal of interest in mental illness and schizophrenia in particular. So I'm going to call on her to sort of give a brief synopsis of schizophrenia and its manifestations.
Sure, yeah, what it is. So how I remember schizophrenia is the word schizo actually means split, and phrenia represents reality. So people kind of confuse multiple personality disorders with schizophrenia and other mental illnesses. And they're definitely not alike, because I think when you have a diagnosis of schizophrenia, you are really separate from reality of what is real. And not always, like there's a continuum, right, of like how mentally ill you can be. You can be completely in deep psychosis like Vincent Lee was, or you can just interpret things a little bit differently than someone else would.
I just wanted to add that I think part of that came from the movie Me, Myself, and I forget it. Irene, yeah.
With Jim Carrey.
Yeah, they labeled his split personality as schizophrenia in that movie, and
they did that with a lot of movies and lots of crime shows. Like everyone on Criminal Minds is schizophrenic.
Everybody.
I
know. And I really love that show, except for that part.
Me too.
And they have real FBI profilers and psychologists writing and supervising for that show, so they should know better.
Right.
So I'm bipolar, and my limited knowledge of schizophrenia is that it's fairly easily treated with medications as far as
when someone's identified, right? Because so there's different kinds of symptoms that can be associated with schizophrenia. There's cognitive symptoms, positive symptoms, and negative symptoms. Have you guys ever heard of any of these before?
No, please elaborate.
No? Okay, so positive symptoms, how I like to think of it, is when things are added that are not supposed to be there. So you are hallucinating, you are seeing things that aren't there, you're hearing things that aren't there. It's something added. Okay. And then negative symptoms are kind of the antisocial behaviors. Some schizophrenics are completely catatonic. There's like a very wide, like I was saying before, like a wide continuum and spectrum of the disease. And then there's cognitive things as well, just how they perceive events. People perceive a billboard as speaking only to them. even though they can tell you what is exactly written on the billboard word for word, they interpret that message as being specifically for them.
So the report with Vince Lee is that God had told him to kill and cannibalize Tim McLean. So that would be...
Because he was an alien, right? Yeah, exactly. So that's a positive symptom. Yeah. And then according to the DSM, if you guys have ever heard of that, it's like the diagnostic criteria manual, right? For all of psychiatry, there's like 5 criteria that need to be met to have a diagnosis of schizophrenia, and those include all of like those symptoms.
So I think at this point it'd be useful for the listener to put themselves in the shoes of what a schizophrenic might go through. Now, this auditory schizophrenia simulation was made by a pharmaceutical company based on interviews with their psychologists. Their psychologists work directly with schizophrenic people, and they made this simulation based on what they have been told auditory hallucinations in schizophrenia is like. So here it is.
You are so stupid. Look at you. No, you can't. Stupid. Poison cars. Jump now. Jump in front of the car. Go on. Do it. No, don't. Don't cross the road. You can't. So stupid. Look at you. Stupid. Pointless.
Touch you.
Worthless.
Did you touch that one?
Stupid.
Yes, you were. You touched them.
So stupid.
Look at you. I can see you sweating.
Stupid.
I can see you.
Pointless.
They're looking up there.
Why are you ignoring me?
You're bad.
Hello. You're disgusting. You're filthy.
You're bad.
You bastard.
Okay, so back to the argument I'd had with my coworker. Where do we side on this? And I imagine there's a continuum of opinions, although my suspicion, based on the two of you being my best friends and you being a competent nurse, is that we're going to sort of swing toward the not criminally responsible side. But, Ood, I want you to play devil's advocate.
I can do that.
If you would. On what grounds would you say, yeah, he should be locked up for life?
I mean, I have family members that need to go on bus travel and need to go on public transport with strangers, and I guess I would worry for their safety.
If someone unmedicated was there, who's to stop? I'm playing devil's advocate again.
Yeah, no, for sure.
Who is to say that he's not going to not take his meds?
And that's the thing. And that's
an argument that I hear a lot.
Well, the only thing I hesitate on is he going to take his meds? And I mean, you go back to bodily autonomy, which we've discussed in previous episodes. Yeah. He has a right to not take his meds, but to what degree do we have a society have the right to expect that he's going to take his meds? And do you say, well, he's got a criminal history, and so part of his sentence should be taking his meds? Does he have because I mean, as I understand it, he's unsupervised right now, but I my understanding is also that he's followed very carefully, as am I. And that they probably wouldn't have let him go unless they were reasonably certain he was at a low risk for relapse. I want to say reoffense, but relapse would be the correct term.
And he was admitted for, 8 years?
8 years.
Yeah, 8 years. I mean, I would hope that those physicians and nurses that were taking care of him would have been able to understand whether or not, he was at risk for the community.
Well, and what person wakes up and is like, I would love to be unmedicated and think that God was telling me to eat this alien? Like, what person makes that conscious decision? As
someone who's mentally ill and has a lot of friends who are mentally ill, there's I'm on 6 different medications that I'm taking daily. Daily, there's that temptation to think, I feel good. What's to say I couldn't feel good on my own, or I just like to test it for a day or two, go a day or two without the meds. And I don't, but it's really fucking hard.
Yeah.
Because it's like, I know there are side effects to these meds. I know some of them make me feel like shit. I know some of them are poisoning my organs. like I'm on lithium, which is toxic. Like it's
Lithium's
not
a bad one.
it's not good for you, but I still take it dutifully every day because I know where I've been before when I've not been medicated on it, and it's far worse than taking it. But I couldn't blame anyone for wanting to experiment with not taking their meds because first of all, they're fucking expensive.
Mm-hmm.
B, there's such a stigma to taking it. Like even when I first got together with Mrs. Leon Filger, who's been tremendously supportive of me, I was frightened for her to see my med bag.
Yeah.
You know, because I've got that med bag that I carry with me everywhere. It's in my backpack and there's a lot of stuff in it. And, you know, even bringing it out at work, you know, if I need to pop an Ativan because I'm having a rough time, I'm so careful about squirreling it away, and I'll, you know, take my whole backpack to the bathroom to dig out the pills. And there's a stigma attached to it. So, I mean, that's another place that temptation comes from. Like, I don't want to feel attached to these things anymore because it's not so much that they're a security blanket, but I don't like, I'm independent in that I don't like to have to rely on other people for things. And I've been independent my entire life. Anytime a problem comes up, I deal with it myself. And I feel that the meds are often killing my independence. Like I can't deal with my shit without them. And that makes me deeply uncomfortable that I can't survive without them. And so, like I said, I couldn't blame anyone on meds like that for discontinuing them. And it takes a lot of effort to not stop taking them. And so I guess part of the trick would be with, I mean, like Vince Lee, for example, assessing his risk for saying, fuck it, I don't want to do this anymore. Because like I said, I couldn't blame it for him. But at the same time, who's to say, I mean, what is the onset of schizophrenia? Is it generally in adulthood?
So it is. It's different for men and women because they say that women have a protective effect from what they think is estrogen that makes us present later with schizophrenia than men. So for men, it's often like 18 or early 20s, and then for women, it's later in their 20s that they present. But I thought I find your perspective really interesting, but also I just wanted to add that the side effect profile of so many of the meds used to treat schizophrenia are terrible.
Yeah.
Like lithium is another really, really terrible drug. And I mean, that's why you have to get blood work monitoring. We have to make sure that you're, you know, not reaching toxic levels. You're not overdosing on lithium, blah, blah, blah. But yeah, they can be pretty brutal, the schizophrenia meds, especially if someone's on a typical antipsychotic. There's two different kinds, right? Atypicals and typicals. Atypicals are better, better side effect profile, less side effects, and the typical antipsychotics are terrible. You can get gynecomastia, you can get man boobs, you can, you know, like you can lactate essentially on some of the medications, like you gain weight, you feel awful. So it can be really difficult for people to take their meds when they make them feel so shitty.
Mm-hmm. That's definitely understandable. And I guess like the point I wanted to make too is then why I asked you about the onset is what's to say, you know, someone between the ages of 18 and 30 doesn't have that onset while they're on the Greyhound bus. Mm-hmm. I mean, who's the real risk? Is it Vince Lee, who's medicated and followed and has insight into his illness? Or is it that random stranger who just suddenly that's their day for the schizophrenia to manifest?
Or just somebody who's homicidal, psychopathic?
I would feel safer on a bus with Vince Lee than I would a random stranger.
Mm.
If Vince Lee was medicated.
If Vince Lee was medicated.
Right.
If Vince Lee was medicated,
Yeah.
Well, there's such a culture of throwawayness and fear. Like even some of the other true crime podcasts that have covered this case, if you've listened to this, I don't need to name it to know what I'm talking about, but the way that the host framed it is just around every corner could be another schizophrenic.
It was
ready to
disgusting.
snap.
That I mean, I'm not going to call it the podcast, but it was fucking disgusting the way they presented it.
Huh? Like he wanted to frame the whole thing as like, you know, every man and woman you pass could be another psycho waiting to snap. So fear mental illness.
Like statistically impossible.
Yeah. Statistically impossible. And I'm deeply offended by the word psycho.
Yeah.
I mean, even crazy, like there was a newspaper article written about me in 2014 during my last hospitalization that was entitled like redefining the word crazy. Because I think this is a controversial statement. In the same way that black people have reclaimed the word nigger, I think psych patients have reclaimed the word crazy in a way, because I'm happy describing myself as that. I don't like the word psycho because of course it's the root word of psychotic, and I'm not.
Yeah, it holds implications.
I'm medicated and I'm stable and I'm a functioning member of society. I'm not a psycho, but yet even calling it the psych ward, I would still like to call it just a mental health facility, because psych ward carries so much stigma with it itself.
Like One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest.
One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, exactly. And interestingly, this is wonderful. In the next episode I cover in, I guess, 3 or 4 weeks from now, is going to be electroconvulsive therapy.
Yeah.
Is it?
It is.
I think I voted for the other one.
Fuck you. I'm doing it anyway. We'll lie about the results of the poll because I really want to do ECT.
Okay.
Yeah. Listeners that are on Patreon, you'll very soon learn that the polls for Leon are mostly for show.
Yeah, they're all for show.
But the polls for Uda and I, we actually stick to them.
No, theirs is legit. I do whatever the fuck I want because I'm Leon fucking Filger.
Yeah. I don't know. I get the feeling of not wanting to take the meds because I'm on SSRIs as well.
I love them.
Oh yes, they keep me stable.
Yeah, no. Fun fact: all of your Occultae Veritatis posts are medicated for mental health disorders.
We are.
But like, I have days where I wonder, like, how much of my behavior and how much of the joy that I'm taking in things is the medication.
Don't care.
I know, it's like, I know it's illogical, but those are the paces my mind goes to. And I think the culture of wanting to quit your meds is prompted by, like, David Avocado Wolf and, like, you don't need meds, just stick your feet in the ocean and drink some vinegar or shit. And, like,
there's such a like an anti-med push. Like, I even have, they're definitely not friends, but coworkers are like, you don't need those meds if you just, first of all, found God.
All right.
Oh,
No.
B,
doesn't work like that.
Yeah,
B, like, just take some fucking time in the forest to breathe. And it's like, I don't think you understand what I'm like.
Barefoot
unmedicated
in the forest,
Yeah.
hugging the trees.
Yeah.
That'll work.
I'd be depressed in the forest.
No, like I understand the skepticism of big pharma, but pharmaceuticals have saved my life a number of times.
Yeah.
I mean, there's definitely something to be said for cognitive behavioral therapy. There's definitely something to be said for naturopathy, not homeopathy, because that's bullshit.
Yeah.
Naturopathy, there's something to be said for going camping, but at the same time,
I'd rather be happy camping than like sad and anxious camping. That's why I continue to take my SSRIs and also go camping.
Yeah, I mean, it's good, but there's a reason. Yes, I mean, the pharmaceutical companies are making a shitload of money off these meds, but they are saving lives, and I think, do I consider pharmaceutical companies to be the savior angels? Absolutely not. I think they're all generally unethical. That's why we're paying so fucking much for these meds. But, good on us. Good on for modern science for coming up with this shit, because we don't have insane asylums in the modern world, and that's for one reason, and that's modern pharmaceuticals.
Well, and all three of us would be in an insane asylum.
I mean, I'd be dead by now. I would have been executed, I'm sure.
I wouldn't be able to get the podcast out every week.
No, you sure wouldn't.
I mean, hardly do now. I mean,
okay, so final thoughts around the circle. Sage, what have you got?
I think this is really an interesting discussion that we've had, and I appreciate you for bringing it up.
Thank you,
Leon, and I appreciate Cami for being here and sharing her expertise. Like, it's been very eye-opening, and I think that my opinions have remained unchanged. Like, I'm glad that he was found not criminally responsible. I think it's cool that he's out there doing his thing, and I can't imagine that he'd want to ever go back to being that guy who beheads people on Greyhound buses, so I'm pretty sure that he's going to keep taking his meds, no matter how fat he gets.
Yeah, that's fair.
You know?
Ood?
I mean, I think at the end of the day, we have to decide what kind of society we want to live in. Do we want to live in one where, if you make a mistake, there's no redemption? If you are mentally ill, there's no redemption. You must be thrown away and locked away to protect the rest of society from your hypothetical future crimes. I think it's a good idea to build rehabilitation, and for criminals and for people who commit crimes and are found not criminally responsible. I think that an emphasis has to be put on rehabilitation so they can get back out in society and live a life instead of living in four walls.
And our expert Cami, what have you got?
Oh, I just had a clarifying question before we finished.
Yeah,
So from my reading of this case, so he has no court orders to have mandated.
He's completely
treatment.
free.
He's completely free.
He's out.
Okay, and so we don't really know then if he is.
We don't
continuing
know.
on. Like, we have no idea if he's continuing on with care or even seeing a physician or has
No
a mental
idea.
health nurse. Nothing. Yeah.
I would hope that he is.
Yeah, and
Like
that's
I
what I was
said,
going to
you know.
say. Like,
My
I
understanding is that he has a psychiatrist who follows up with him regularly, who will report him if he doesn't show up for his regular appointments.
Okay, well,
there's
that's
no legal
positive.
requirement
That's
for
positive.
it, but that's
Yeah, and I think it's important to recognize, too, that there's lots of different treatments for schizophrenia, like I mentioned before, and some of them are, injections, every 3 weeks or whatever, or I can't quite remember the time intervals, or oral medications, and then even ECT, actually, for schizophrenia as well. So I think there's lots of treatment options. Hopefully he's being followed by somebody, and that it's like close monitoring, because I agree. I think that he's not criminally responsible, and that schizophrenia is a really terrible illness.
It is shitty. I mean, I think we're fortunate that it is, like relative to bipolar or major depressive disorder, it's pretty easy to treat as far as like some good base meds that...
It can't, everyone's different though. Everyone's different. Not everyone responds to treatment the same way. Treatment only sometimes works for so long. That's kind of why in the time that I've spent at different mental health centers, they use ECT as an adjunct because it helps lower the threshold for medications. Then you can maybe, take those medications again. Maybe they'll work again, or take a different medication. But it can be difficult to treat. And often people don't show up for their appointments to have their injections, or they don't take their medications, and it can be really difficult. But I know here specifically we have a really awesome group of mental health nurses that go out into the community and find people to give them their injections, which is fantastic, but that's not always the case.
Or not, other centers aren't as lucky as we are.
Yeah, exactly.
I think people with mental illness have been some of the most brilliant innovators in human history. And I think it's terribly tragic that in the past we've been stuffed in asylums. And I think that, stigma busting is some of the most important work we can do in society right now. Overall, there's so many of us are suffering with mental illness who are unidentified or are still
scared.
One in five.
1 in 5. And I think, more than destigmatizing abortion or more than accepting gay marriage, I think as a benefit to society, destigmatizing mental illness is the single biggest step we can take toward productivity. There are so many hours, so many dollars lost to mental illness because we don't talk about it. And I think trying to break that down is so important.
It's just another fucked up organ.
It's just another fucked up organ.
Yeah.
Sexy questions.
3 sexy questions for tonight are relating to pornography and its relationship to body positivity.
Okay.
So the 3 sexy questions, and of course I'll start because I'm ballsy like that. Is pornography harmful? Number 2 is, what is your experience with pornography? And number 3, would you porn?
Okay.
So is pornography harmful? I believe yes, it is. I think there's commonly accepted wisdom that pornography is harmful to women because it provides unrealistic standards for beauty. I think it's for that reason more harmful to men because it sets up young men with the idea of what women should be,
and what sex should be.
And what sex should be, and not even entirely physically, but I think like our opinion of what a labia should look like is crafted exclusively by porn stars who've had labiaplasties.
They're all tucked in and neat.
When you get into actually experiencing a vagina for yourself for the first time and it doesn't look like what you've seen in porn, it's traumatizing for both partners. Is my opinion.
Okay.
And it also, it gives us the idea that your cock's got to be 7 inches long. You've got to be able to last 35 minutes. And you've got to produce a cup and a half of cum every time and fire it 24 feet across the room. And that's unreasonable. At least, I'm in my 30s now. I can't do that anymore.
That's fair.
I think that porn is stuck in an age that's not in 2018. I think that the cultural revolutions that have happened in society that have put, transgender rights and women's rights and LGBTQ rights in the forefront, those haven't been seen much in porn, I don't think. I think porn is still centric around, You know,
and when you do see like LGBT and trans porn, it's always seen as like a fetish, like it's like tranny porn. You would never see it as anything else. So it's like fag porn. Yeah. And when you go to a porn website, there's like a specific section for like tranny porn.
They changed it to transgender porn from she-male porn though on Pornhub.
Progress, I guess.
Like
I don't know why I know that. Yeah.
I saw it online.
I think there are certain directors out there that are making a point to make realistic sex and realistic porn and positive porn, but I think they're few and far between.
Yeah, the vast majority is like hot women with like double D boobs and like long blonde hair with like huge O faces.
And there's never any condom use
Yeah.
generally involved, which and anytime it is like, even if you, and I don't know why the fuck I know this, if you ever watch documentaries with the porn stars actually discussing what they do.
I do. Hot Girls Wanted.
Okay. There's a hell of a lot of sexual assault that goes on in the porn world that's unreported, and a lot of stuff that appears in the videos isn't consensual. There's just money involved, which, you know, a paycheck doesn't equal consent.
Right.
Yeah. And of course, even though the industry is kind of toxic, I still support the rights of the performers to do whatever job they choose to do and to pursue money and however they choose they want to. And
for sure.
Yeah.
But yeah, human trafficking. Yeah, that's another problem with porn. And often, like in that one of the documentaries, I've watched so many of the Hot Girls Wanted documentaries. They were talking about like not revenge porn, but like humiliation porn, where they basically like spit on them and like pee on them, and these women, like their emotions are real. Like they are crying and they are traumatized and they are upset by this. Like it's not acting, which is gross.
Well, even actresses like Sasha Grey, who has gone out and spoken about her time in porn, like she said that she enjoyed none of the brutal stuff that she went through, and she did it just to get a name in the industry and to get more money, because the more you're willing to do, the more you're paid.
I've never seen a porn and thought like, I want to do that with a loving partner. Yeah. Like it's very one night standish. And even then, I mean, even from a young age, I knew that porn wasn't realistic, or at least that I didn't want whatever that was.
Yeah. Alrighty. Question 2.
Question 2. What's your experience with porn? So I'll start with that. I had no idea what masturbation was when I was 13. And when our family got something more than dial-up, I typed in what I thought was the most sensible thing, sex.com. So the question, what's your experience with porn? When I was 13, my parents got something that wasn't dial-up, and I decided it would be a good idea to just type in sex.com, because it seemed to me that would probably be a porn site. And there was an animated GIF in the left-hand bar. Fuck you.
It's GIF.
It's GIF.
No, it's not.
I don't care. Fuck you. I don't care. There was an animated go fuck yourself in the left-hand pane of a man masturbating. I'm like, what the hell is he doing? So, of course, I went to my room and did it, and I got off, and I'm like, holy fuck, I know how to jerk off now.
Because of that GIF.
Because of that animated go fuck yourself. And I wonder if I hadn't seen that, how many months it would have taken me to figure it out.
You would have figured it out.
I would have figured it out.
Everybody figures it out.
I think even my kid figures it out.
How old's your kid?
3.
Yeah.
Oh,
when he pees, sometimes he's like, my penis is big. Why is it big, Mom? Like, stop touching it and it'll go. It won't be big.
Reflex erection.
Yeah, he has those a lot.
I look forward to that. Great.
Yeah. It's a thing.
Wonderful.
And then he cries when it doesn't go away.
I cry when mine doesn't go away.
He gets like really upset. He's like, Mommy, my penis is big. Why is it big? I want it to go down. Yeah, so it's...
That's when he says that, when he's 18 and says that to his partner.
And then she'll say no.
Yeah.
As long as 4 hours or less, right?
Yeah.
Ood.
Sorry.
Much like many Canadian kids, while my parents were at a hockey game, I typed boobs into Google. And I was amazed with the results. They were available and right in front of me. And
plentiful.
Yeah, and plentiful. Just
varied.
And unrealistic, generally.
I don't know. I guess there was a mix of porn star and amateur, so I would say that I was getting a taste of a bit of everything.
That's good.
Yeah, and it infected my young brain, and it's brought me to this point today. And what I said in the first part about acknowledging all the problems within the industry, I am a total hypocrite, because I indulge. I indulge freely. And I shouldn't, but I do.
I mean, it gets the job done.
Yeah.
Really, I think, like, more than anything, porn has killed my imagination. Because in the days before the easy access of porn, I had to fantasize, properly construct a fantasy in my head in order to get off. And now it's like a minute of this trash and I can be done. And it's just like a mechanical function rather than any sort of actual emotional act.
That's really sad.
Thanks.
You're welcome.
Appreciate that.
No problem.
What about you, Sage?
Well, I never really looked at porn because porn wasn't for girls, right?
There's an entire
back
section.
in,
that is
Have you-
crazy talk, though.
well,
That's
yeah,
crazy talk.
it's clearly crazy talk. But like back when I was 13, like
Mhm.
I'm 30, like it was a long time ago. It was.
Have you ever
really-
seen the like for her interest section on Pornhub?
Yeah.
It's just like dudes.
Yeah.
And I don't think you like as a bisexual man, I don't get onto like the women's porn, and I don't think as a heterosexual woman I would be into any of that.
No, I like the both. Like I'm bi too, and I like both.
Well, that's
Yeah, I don't know.
It's terrible. It's trash.
Yeah, like it's all pretty trash. I
It
don't
is.
know. I'd rather have real sex than watch other people have sex.
I would rather have real sex than watch other people have sex, but the section on like you can tell it's like actual couples who are having legit sex where it's all like fucking awkward and he accidentally poked her in the bum and whatnot. Like stuff that actually fucking happens.
Like slips
Yeah.
out.
Yeah.
Awkwardness, like you see.
I stabbed around in the dark. I got the wrong hole. Like it happens.
Oh, get off my hair. Yeah,
Yeah.
all that. Yeah.
Excuse me, I've got to pick some pubes out of my teeth. Could you just chill for a minute?
Well, it's just like a good actor. Like a good actor forms a character, and you can see their flaws, and you can see their ticks.
Yeah.
And with amateur porn, you can see the realness, you can see the awkwardness.
Mind
and-
you, so much of amateur porn is not actually amateur. It's
I
just
know.
like someone has a shitty camera. You can tell when it's like, if you go to Pornhub and type in homemade instead of amateur, that's where
Yeah.
you get like the real amateur porn. Not that I would know that, but.
Oh, you do. You do.
Cammy, do you have an opinion?
Well, as I definitely am a women porn watcher and have been for a long time. And my first experience with porn was actually Bravo television Red Shoe Diaries.
Yes,
yeah, Red Shoe
yes,
Diaries.
with David Duchovny. Yes.
Yeah, totally in love with David Duchovny my whole life because of that show.
I have gotten off to that show so many times.
So many times because he tells the story. She's beautiful, but like all different kinds of women.
Once in
women
a while,
of
you get to see
color.
a silhouette of a dick. And
Yeah. And like I guess I was just like I don't really want to see that anyways at that point when I was that young.
Better in your imagination.
Yeah, it's
It is,
always
'cause
better in my
that show
imagination
made you
anyways.
think about what was going on because there wasn't
Yes.
quite enough.
Yes, and the acting was like better than most.
It was not
porn.
bad, yeah.
It was not bad, right? So yeah,
Not good, but
that
not
was
bad.
my first experience with porn. So it was positive. I think anything with David Duchovny is pretty positive, though.
I
That's
agree.
So the third and final question is: would you porn? And Sage, I'm throwing this to you first.
I don't think so. I don't know.
That's fair. Ood.
I think I would. Like I've been in musicals, and like I'm the only.
It's not a fucking musical.
No. Listen, wait for
I
my.
am having sex.
Wait for my logic here. I'm the only person in my family that has never feared like speaking in front of people. Like when somebody dies, I speak at the funeral. When somebody gets married, I speak at the reception. Like so.
Speaking, fucking, almost the same.
Almost.
Yeah,
Roughly, yeah.
I'm like I've been in situations
There's
where
mouths involved in both.
I've been in situations where I've been naked or nearly naked in front of people, and I haven't felt nervousness or apprehension. So I don't see. I mean, I don't know until I'm there, but I don't see a reason why I'll be apprehensive if I went one more step. But maybe I will. Maybe there's a block that I won't be able to get through.
Well, there's only one way to find out.
Okay.
Your partner's sitting right behind me.
Yeah.
Daniel, come on down.
I think now that I'm an academic,
Yeah.
quote unquote, probably can't do porn anymore.
Yeah, that's
I also
fair.
have some pretty identifiable tattoos.
Yeah.
So that really affects my chances of ever being in porn. And I have to go with the sleek boob porn. I don't really have any boobs. Don't really have an ass. Kind of like ambiguous looking. So I don't really fit like a genre.
There's a huge market for androgyny porn.
Yeah, I guess I could do that.
I think
maybe,
that's Sage's
but-
thing, is it not?
Yeah.
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 Yeah. I would not do porn for a commercial. This is a fucking weird question. I don't know why I wrote this down. I would not let anyone else see it, but if Mrs. Leon Filger, who's sitting 2 feet away from me, was ever into doing something on camera for like our own enjoyment later, I would definitely be down for that.
Oh, that's
Oh, yeah,
different.
yeah,
that's
that's
different.
different.
We've all done that.
Yeah.
I haven't done it.
Oh, you got to
No?
do it.
What?
Gotta do
That
it.
surprises me.
Yeah,
Really?
it's good.
So, yeah, thank you, occultists, for listening. That's been our Occultae Veritatis podcast for tonight. For OVPod, I'm Leon Filger. With us,
Sage Murray.
Ood Gallifrey.
and our wonderful special guest who's been so incredibly enlightening.
Cammy Clark.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right.
Thank
Have a
you.
good night.
Yay.
I love you.
And as always, we have a palate cleanser playing us out, and today the palate cleanser is Play the Hook and Leave by the artist Steve Combs. Enjoy. Alrighty, we have quite a variety of stuff to get to in this after show. We'll start off with an email from Dara Spencer concerning Case 13. Case 13 being about Daniel Shaver, the young man who was shot by police in Arizona, and this person emailing us is responding to that. The email reads, in Case 13, there was a lot of debate about the professions we choose and the risks we take. I am a retired firefighter, and my father is a retired chief of police. It is true, we do choose these professions knowing some risk is involved and we may die surviving our communities. That is a part of it for sure. But what I have also realized growing up in this life was that in certain situations you start judging whose life is worth more, yours or theirs. And in a split decision, many will choose their own. They will have a flash of family, or see that the other person as a drunk or an addict. I'm not saying any of this is okay, but it is a combination of fight, flight, or freeze. And freeze may be the thing that gets you killed. We are trained to fight past that. I asked my dad about this case. He said he cried when he heard about it because it was a drunk kid. Just a kid. My dad said he would have walked up to him, pulled him by his ear, and made him call his dad. My dad was a cop in the late 70s, so it was a different time. My father and I are convinced that being a police officer has changed over the years, and people see it as a power play more than surviving your community. That is why I became a firefighter. He begged me not to become a cop. Anyways, just found your podcast a few days ago, and I'm already caught up. Keep it up. No problem. We don't plan on ending anytime soon. This thing is going to keep on going until one or all of us is unable to do it anymore. But going to the main part of your email, it's nice to hear that an ex-chief of police thinks that policing practices have changed also. It lends a lot more credence to the bullshit we are spewing, because really, at the end of the day, we're just three idiots sitting in a room. We don't know much about how policing has changed, and it's interesting that your father insisted on you not going into policing. I think part of the problem is, and again, I'm just a layman, but I think part of the problem is that a lot of police procedures take psychology somewhat into consideration, but a lot of the practices they use now were developed and have been used before psychology was seriously developed as a science. So a lot of the practices they use are pre-psychology. And I think that comes through in the Daniel Shaver case. It was a man that was panicked, that was drunk, that was so fearful for his life that he was blubbering and begging not to be shot. And under those situations, telling a human that you're not allowed to make a mistake or I'm going to kill you it's an impossible thing to ask. When he was under that amount of stress, he was bound to get hurt in some way. He was bound to be killed. Police practices have to catch up with human psychology so that tragedies like that don't happen again. But again, thank you very much for writing in. Feel free to write again. It sounds like you guys have a wealth of experience, both you and your dad, and it's very nice to hear from you. So thank you for writing in. Next up, we have a recording from Sage. She tells me that she has a birthday shout-out to give.
Hello, this is Sage Murray. I would just like to give a quick shout-out to my dad, whose birthday was on March 1st, and to my sister, whose birthday is today, on March 3rd. Love you very much, and have happy birthdays. Love you, bye.
Oh, thank you, Sage, and happy birthday to your dad and sister. We've added a few new things to the Patreon. We have 3 episodes in the Black Archive, which is me, Sage, and Leon, all answering the same 20 questions so you get to know us a bit more. We're going to be adding more and more stuff to that Black Archive all the time. The thing that's going to go up next, probably this weekend, is going to be a recording of me and Sage exploring the ladder to freedom that Scientology covers. And we read through it, and we learn about what flubbable means, and we also started a Discord chat just for our Patreon subscribers, and me and the hosts are always hanging out in there and talking with people, so if you want to get a little closer to the hosts and be involved in some of the backroom stuff and ask us questions directly, just become a $5 patron, and we will open up the chat to you. We're going to try something a bit different for the ending of this episode. I'm going to do my little play out message and play us out, but after the break we're going to be playing a bunch of different commercials for different podcasts, and I'm doing this for 2 reasons. One, I believe that it's easier to lift people up around you. I think that's helpful, giving a little help to the community. And number 2, these people have helped me. They've done a lot of hard work retweeting my stuff, talking with me, giving us shout-outs on the podcast, and this is going to be a big effort to get all of them back. So after the little play-out, there's going to be a bunch of different commercials for different podcasts. If you like them, go ahead and listen to them. Try out an episode. I've been Oud Gallifrey. If you want to follow us, just go to the website, www.ovpod.ca. All our social medias are listed there. You want to follow us on all those, because I always post bonus content about the episode in question. So if you want to hear more about Vincent Lee and some different perspectives and articles and stuff like that, and, you know, some pictures and documentaries of the case, just follow our social medias. That's all I've got. Thank you for listening. Thank you for stopping in for part of your day to listen to three Canadians blab about nothing. And it's very nice that you tuned in. Have a wonderful Sunday, and we'll see you next time.
Hi, this is Minna from True Crime Finland. Finland, so peaceful and safe. There isn't even any crime there, right? Wrong. Join me every 2 weeks in discovering the dark side of the land of 1,000 lakes. Everything from human trafficking and Ponzi schemes to double homicide and child abuse. From the forgotten and lesser known to the legendary and infamous Finnish cases, the podcast will be sure to offer something for everyone. You can find True Crime Finland on iTunes, Pocket Casts, Podcast Addict, or wherever you get your podcasts.
I'm Chelsea, and I love true crime.
And I'm David, and I love horror movies. And we co-host Based on a True Crime, a podcast where we discuss the real cases that inspired some of the most gruesome crimes and criminals to grace the big and small screens.
You can find us on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, and Google Play if you're interested in hearing the true stories behind some really great movies, including In Cold Blood, The Town That Dreaded Sundown, and Murder by Numbers.
So grab some popcorn, with extra fake butter topping of course, and join us as we explore just how much of the movies that kept you awake at night are real.
Hey Courtney.
Hey Ashley.
Do you love hearing about true crime and history and other fun stuff?
Oh, you know I do.
Well good, because that's what we talk about every week on the Cult of Domesticity podcast, so I'm glad that you enjoy it.
Oh, I probably should have known that.
Yeah, probably. Tell them where to find us.
Well, we're available on iTunes, Google Play, Spotify, Podbean, and other fun places.
New episodes come out pretty much every Thursday.
So be there or be square.
Hi, I'm Lucy Mortem. And my name is Ginny. And we invite you to join us every week on Les Mordia, where we discuss our favorite true crime topics.
But not just true crime, any and all things dark and mysterious that pertain to the human psyche. Cults, conspiracy, weird pop culture.
But hey, we're not professionals, and we're often inappropriate. We really bank on you finding that charming, though. So turn out the lights, lock the doors, and find us on your favorite podcast app.
Let's skip the foreplay. Murder. You want to talk about it. Hear about all kinds of nasty things. Sex, torture, madness, dismemberment. And why? More than anything, you want to know why. Well, dear listener, you ain't never had a friend like me.
Tune in to Murder Was the Case, featuring author and investigative criminologist Lee Meller. Sometimes solo, often with guests, always horrifically entertaining. Listen to Murder Was the Case on iTunes, Google Play, or go to murderwasthecase.podbean.com.
It's gonna be sick.
Hello, and welcome to a promo for Blood on the Rocks, a podcast on all things creepy, morbid, or otherwise dark. I'm your host, Akshay Taylor. Join me and various guest hosts as we cover a whole load of subjects. We'll show you the world of serial killers, accidents, hauntings, black metal, and more. Find us on iTunes, Stitcher, and all those other fancy podcast platforms. Alcohol and profanity content may vary.
Do you get mad when listening to true crime? Well, so do I. If you want a weekly true crime podcast that says what you're thinking, then grab a beer and pull up a deck chair. This is Cambo from True Crime Island, another true crime podcast, and maintain the rage with me. Visit truecrimeisland.com where you can download or stream each episode, plus there's links to iTunes and social media. And as I always say, don't forget to delete your browser history. This is True Crime Island.